son Derek was born full term. He was what we thought a perfectly healthy baby.
You're swimming! You're doing it! Yo, mama! Yo! See mom. Happy you.
So when do you think you first started realizing that Derek was having problems?
Initially in the hospital, he was projectile vomiting. They had to deep throat syringe him because he was turning blue. But then we went home, everything seemed fine, and then 3 days into it, he was having seizures. His eyes were fluttering and projectile vomiting, couldn't hold anything down. His head was always tilted to the side. He wasn't moving like, my other two older children did. But I would say within 3 weeks, we knew, and we went to a neurologist right away. Prior to that, in the hospital, he did fail his hearing test, which is another indication that there could be neurological problems. And after going to the neurologist, they sent us to get an MRI, and he was diagnosed with agenesis of the corpus callosum.
For those that don't know, could you just explain a little bit more what that is? From my understanding, it's super rare, for someone to get.
Yeah. Agenesis of the corpus callosum is, it means absence. So he was born without the corpus callosum, which is a piece of the brain. It's the bridge. So that's what connects the left and the right side. So for him to move his lips and talk at the same time should be kind of impossible. For an example, pain tolerance. His pain tolerance is extremely high. He was playing with one of my kids and had his foot up and fell into the wall and normally slashed his head. And normally a typical kid would cry. He just kind of got up like it was nothing. Mm-hmm. So pain tolerance, heat, cold, nothing really affects him. The disorder that Derek was born with is very rare, so there's not very much research. There's obviously no cure because you can't really replace the piece of brain that's missing. The spectrum of children and adults with agenesis of the corpus callosum is so extreme. I've met a child that had an MRI done, and she didn't even know she was missing the corpus callosum. She was a typical 14-year-old gymnast, hit her head, they did an MRI and discovered that she had complete absence of her corpus callosum. So the spectrum is just huge. Mm-hmm. So that's why there's really every child with agenesis of the corpus callosum is very different.
So growing up, when Derek was a child, what was life like then?
It was hectic. We had speech therapists, physical therapists, and occupational therapists coming to the house 3 times a week each. So, the intense therapy helped a lot. As he progressed throughout his childhood, he was able to feed himself. He was able to dress himself. He was starting to talk. He was, by the time he was 14, he was full sentences. He could shower by himself, dress himself, feed himself, make himself simple meals, read, write, tie his shoes, all stemming from when he was, 3 months old, and we had therapy come to the house and work our way up through those 14 years. It was amazing.
So were there any types of special activities that Derek liked to do?
Oh yeah. The town that we live in was so accepting. He would come to the local football games and go out on the field with the players and do the coin toss, and Special Olympics was huge. He ran track. He did the basketball Special Olympics in Dover. Dover was a huge one that school. Any sport activity that any of my older kids were involved in, he was always welcome on the sideline and loved every minute of it. There was actually one of the teams knew that Derek was going to be at the game because he had been a part of the program for so many years, that they set up at halftime to suit him up, set up a video camera without me knowing, and brought him on the field and let him run a touchdown. And they had already like prepped their team to, you know, let him get this touchdown. Everybody on the sidelines met him in the end zone. It was just like, it was amazing. It was awesome.
Number 15, Devin Lyons on the carry. And takes one for a touchdown. Devin Lyons on that carry.
He was a funny, happy kid.
So at what point did everything change with Derek?
It all started one day. Derek came home from school in March 2015 with a headache, and being that he has very high pain tolerance, we took him right to the hospital. Not knowing what was going on, they did an MRI and a CAT scan. We were there for quite a while, and they found nothing other than his normal diagnosis. We brought him home, and that continued. He would always hold his head. We noticed that he started to become nonverbal. He stopped feeding himself. He would just sit at the table and stare at his food instead of feeding himself. He began wetting himself, having accidents. And then he became aggressive and agitated and just went downhill from there. We wound up taking him to Philly, and we went to CHOP, and we saw a neurologist, an endocrinologist, and a geneticist. All three of them ran tests. We went down the whole 14 years of, you know, all the diagnosis and everything we've been through with each one of those doctors, and then they came back with nothing. You know, they didn't find anything, and wanted to do more tests, and that's when we were just said, you know, enough with the testing. We're just gonna take it day by day and see what happens. And it was a matter of 6 months. The regression, the agitation, the, you know, biting himself, wetting himself, and then he finally just became calm. And there was no more smile, there was no more laughing, and he counted on us 100% to take care of him.
So was there at any point that you had some type of hope or you thought that something was going to change or something was going to get better?
Actually, as bizarre as this sounds, he had a tooth infection. It was a root canal, and they actually had to extract the tooth. And this had been going on for 3 months, maybe 3 to 6 months before we even knew he had pain or what the problem was with him being so agitated, you know, when he had already become calm. So they were extracting the tooth, and before surgery, we all sat around and said, what if when they extract this tooth, he just wakes up and is the old Derek? You know? So yeah, there's always that hope that something will happen and he will be back to his old self.
With life with Derek now, you know, what's next? Where do you go from here?
It's a day-by-day struggle. You know, it's, that was a hard one for me to swallow. You know, knowing that for the rest of his life, he's going to need us. But we have stopped trying to get the old Derek back, and we are working on building a new one.
As a parent with someone who has a condition that is as devastating as Derek's, what is something that you could give in advice, maybe to someone that's going through something similar or someone that's going through exactly the same thing as you are right now?
That's a tough one. Everybody has tried to give us advice over the years, but every child is different. You need to do what is best for you, your family, and most importantly, your child, like Derek. Don't ever second guess yourself. You know what's best for your child and what your child needs. I don't care what kind of degree you have or how many years experience you have. You know what's best for your child and what your child needs. I have cried, I have screamed, I've been angry, I've laughed, but most importantly, don't give up.
For the haters, come on, do it now or later. Whoa, yeah. It don't matter what your name is, share your story, we'll be waiting. Go.